Hi, my name is Collin Guieb.
My name is Oblea, and our project's called Buzz Lightyear Astroblasters.
The basic motivation for our project was the Disneyland ride, Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters. It's basically a dark ride in which the players sit and shoot lasers at targets, and we just wanted to recreate this and make a mini take-home version of it.
So for the objectives/goals of our project, we mainly had three. The first one was to build a fully functional laser diode. The second one was to implement game logic, which means configuring the scoring and the timing into one cohesive project. And then the third one was to create a game environment and targets.
And so our first objective was to create the laser. We made a small red laser pointer out of a red laser diode, a push button, 2 watch batteries, some wires, and an empty chapstick tube to contain it all. And our circuit is just the voltage source with the push button and the diode in that order. And here are pictures of our working laser pointer. It's wrapped in black electrical tape to contain it, and the wires are all inside as well as the batteries, and once you hit the push button it works.
And so the next component of our project is the targets and LED indicator, which consists of the MyDAC and the LabVIEW software, 4 blue LED lights, 4 1K resistors, and 5 photoresistor targets. And so the reason why we have 5 is because we wanted 5 targets, and the only way to do that, given the limited input channels on the MyDAC, is that we have 2 of the photoresistors connected in parallel, which you can see in the bottom left circuit diagram, as opposed to the top left circuit diagram, which shows the targets with only 1 photoresistor target. The one on the right shows how we configured the LEDs, where the 5 volts is basically the output from the MyDAC, and then we connected that to the LED and then to ground. And so one of the major components of this project was testing the different photosensitive components. And so the 4 major components that were available to us in lab were the photoconductors, photodiodes, phototransistors, and photoresistors. And so the first one we tested were the photoconductors, which were a very simple device, but ultimately very slow in producing results, and so wasn't very useful to our project. The second one was the photodiode, which were able to produce very fast results, but at the same time had a very average sensitivity to light, and so we ultimately scrapped that one. The third one was the phototransistors, which were slower than the photodiodes, but more sensitive to light, but with this comes the more sensitivity to ambient light, which made it less useful for our project. And so ultimately we went with photoresistors, which were able to produce fast results and had a reasonable sensitivity to light, such that we were able to detect the light intensity from the laser diode that we were using. And so this is just a picture of our circuit diagram. You can see the different inputs and outputs and how we configured the photoresistors and the LED.
And moving on to the gameplay of our project. First, the player goes into the startup stage. This asks the player to shoot each target just to configure the light as well as the LEDs. Once each one is hit, it blinks, and we move on to the launch sequence. The launch sequence lights up each block, each target in a sequence, and that signals us into the next one, which signals our start of the main gameplay. The main gameplay lasts for 30 seconds. The player hits targets while the MyDAC counts the points, and we'll go more into that.
And so the gameplay mode, after calibrating and the launch sequence, we're able to go into gameplay mode, which is where the player is able to hit various photoresistor targets, and depending on how many targets the player hits and within the given amount of time, we can calculate a score, which is outputted onto the front panel in LabVIEW.
And this is a picture of our user interface. So the first part is the calibration start sequence, where you can see each target has to be hit in order to move on to the launch sequence. The launch sequence doesn't require any user input, it just flashes the lights in a certain sequence. And after that, we go into the main gameplay. It counts each target as well as adds up the score, and we have a timer for 30 seconds here, and a pause button and a reset as well.
And so these are just pictures of the different targets we have. Starting from the top left we have the planet Nebula, which is worth 100 points. Then top right, we have the rocket, which was worth 200 points, and then the aliens, which are worth 300 points, regardless of which one you hit, and then Emperor Zurg, which is worth 400 points.
And lastly, we had to create our game environment, and because the photoresistors need to detect a difference when they're hit by the laser, we had to simulate a dark environment. So we used a box and black paper to simulate that. Once we did that, we placed the wires and our targets through the box and decorated it accordingly. And that's just a picture of all the targets in the box, and they're all set up and wired through the back. And that's a picture of the box. We have a nice decoration at the top.
And the flaps on the side are meant to block any ambient light that would penetrate otherwise. And so the ultimate conclusion of our project was one of the major places we spent a lot of time was LabVIEW and the software and trying to figure out the game logic and basic compilation of different codes into LabVIEW in order to make sure our game worked how we wanted it to work. And the second one was just hardware-wise, solid wires work better than stranded wires in terms of breadboarding and soldering the wires together and making a better-looking game environment.
And for future projects, or if we had more time, we'd want to incorporate the motor somehow to make moving targets or moving obstacles to make the game harder. We'd want to introduce different modes, such as this stop-go type game where we include more lights, a red and a green light. The user wouldn't be able to get points during the red lights, and they would during the green lights while they're lit. And lastly, a memory type of game where the user hits the lights after the sequence is played.
And so this is just a list of our references where we got different circuit schematics, and the intro and motivation slide pictures are found on PhotoBucket, and then all of the other photos that you see in our presentation were taken by me and Collin.
Overall, it was really fun. Yay, EE3.